But now let's talk with John Thomas. John, thank you for being with us today and for stepping aside from your responsibilities heading up our denomination. It occurred to me in your remarks about gentleness, you had many examples from the world of politics and international relations, but what happens when churches or congregations lose that spirit of gentleness?
Well, I long ago gave up my illusions about the gentleness of church politics, but I still can get disappointed. We often find ourselves beating each other, win-win at all costs, and in the process I think we lose track of what it's all about God's love for us and how we seek to show that to others.
As if we're sort of caught up in, the sense that we're righteous and fighting for something good, so we don't need to be gentle, we should be tough.
Absolutely. We've got to be tough. We have justice and righteousness on our side, and in the process we display the very things we're arguing against.
I wonder, John, where do you think this aggressive, assertive Christianity comes from? Is it born into a church setting? Is it formulated by what's happening in society? Is it a combination of all those things? It seems like it's ramped up a lot and continues to ramp up.
Well, I think, certainly you can find in the Bible illustrations of a kind of an aggressiveness. Jesus himself turns over the tables in the temple, and there are many illustrations where extreme oppression or unrighteousness calls for an aggressive, kind of assertive speech for truth. But I think we also soak it up from the culture around us, and we allow the church to reflect the culture rather than mirroring a different kind of image to the culture.
John, the United Church of Christ is known in the sort of American religious landscape as being out there early and often on the key social justice issues, be it civil rights or the ordination of women or the ordination of gays and lesbians in the church. We tend to be out front early. Is it possible to be that kind of justice-focused church and still be gentle?
I think it's not only possible, it's absolutely essential. I was thinking today as I was reflecting on my own remarks about people who've lived that out. I think of Desmond Tutu, who was one of the most powerful figures in the 20th century and indeed the 21st century for justice, for liberation, but always with a kind of gentleness of spirit and hospitality to others. Martin Luther King Jr. spoke with great power, but was, I think, at the heart level, a gentle person. Gandhi was a person of great gentleness. So the people in my life, and I suspect in our lives together in the church, who have had the most impact, have spoken with great power and great courage, but underneath it has been a gentleness that reflects, I think, their deep faith and their sense that their comfort comes from belonging to God.
Let's talk a little bit, John, about the UCC identity. You're very proactive in how you reach out to the community through different commercials and in a way that's different than many other denominations, I think. Can you speak to that a little bit about how that works, how you help manage that, what some of the goals behind that are for the denomination?
Well, we've realized that the days of simply sitting in church and waiting for people to come is over. That we need to be out in the streets, out in the marketplace, and out in the media that people use. Just as Paul used the public media of his day, the spoken word in the center of the community, we need to be on television, on the radio, on the web. And so these last years have been a kind of time for experimentation for us. We've had fun, we've been playful, and I think we've discovered, if nothing else, that people are delighted to know that there is a church that can be a little whimsical and can sort of take itself not too seriously. Religion sometimes seems so sober and grim and oppressive that humor and laughter, particularly if it's poked at ourselves a bit, can really be effective.
Well, give us some specific examples of that. I think I know what you're alluding to with some of the commercials, but we have some time today. How have you used humor and the things you're talking about to reach out and welcome people to the United Church of Christ?
Well, one of the central themes we've been trying to communicate is that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you're welcome here in the United Church of Christ. Many churches, of course, affirm that and try to live that out. But our message was particularly to people who are not already part of the church, but people who have even been alienated from the church or wounded by the church, or who for whatever reason feel unwelcome. And so one of our commercials was really set up as a kind of bouncer commercial, a couple of nightclub bouncers outside a church with the velvet rope saying who could come in and who had to stay out. When SpongeBob SquarePants, the cartoon character, was accused by someone from the religious right of being sort of a front for the gay agenda, we had a SpongeBob SquarePants doll in my office and a picture taken with me saying that I welcome SpongeBob to the United Church of Christ. It was a serious message about tolerance, about inclusion, but it was done in a playful kind of way. And I suspect my legacy, if nothing else, will be my picture with SpongeBob.
We like
Probably make you popular with any children around.
Right.
That's
Yes.
right. In fact, I actually had to start watching the show so I could answer questions for kids when I went out to local churches.
Oh, that's great. John, tell us something about this statement that we hear a lot of times about the United Church of Christ, that God is still speaking. What does that mean?
Well, that's the phrase we've picked up. It really comes originally from one of our forebears, John Robinson, who said goodbye to the Pilgrims as they left for the New World from Holland, and he reminded them that the Lord has yet more light and truth to break forth from God's holy word. But then we picked up a very contemporary, more secular version from Gracie Allen, who left a note for her husband George when she died. She said, "Remember, never place a period where God has placed a comma." And we added, God is still speaking to that. We believe that in these ancient words in the scriptures, God still speaks in new and fresh ways to respond to the changing circumstances and challenges of our day. And so God is speaking a new and fresh word, even though the words come out of those enduring ancient words from the text of Scripture.
Does that change the way you read the Bible?
I don't think so, because I think everyone has always read the Bible that way. Jesus himself was interpreting the Hebrew Scriptures and trying to understand how they spoke in fresh, compelling ways. You have heard it said, but I say to you, God is still speaking. So I think we've continued to read in that spirit, that we have heard it said, but new occasions teach new duties and call us to confront challenges that the ancient writers could never have imagined. So it's important to try to stay true to the intentions and the original wisdom of those texts, but to see how they apply themselves in a new age and a new way.
As president of the United Church of Christ, John, I wonder, you must face several challenges in managing the denomination. What are perhaps a few of those that you're hearing from pastors like Lillian or other folks that you're trying to help negotiate and move forward in a positive way? And that if we have UCC ministers watching the program, you'd like to know that you're working on it in an active way.
Well, I should say with one of our great pastors here,
I
I never
so.
try to manage the denomination.
Right.
But
It's like herding cats.
herding cats,
Yeah.
but we love our cats. So I think, part of the challenge is to try to give people a sense of a unifying vision, something that holds us together, that gives us a sense of movement into the future. That's very important at a time when it can be discouraging to be a pastor of a local church, when it's very challenging, to know that you're part of something bigger and part of a movement that has a great legacy from the past and a great gift to the future. That's one of the things we've been trying to do. I think another important piece is to continue to claim that legacy in compelling ways around issues of justice and peace in the world. We have a distinctive voice in the American religious scene, and I think it's important for our local churches to know that without them, something would be missing from this culture, and it's important and vital that we remain strong and courageous in our voice.
John, some people have suggested that we live in a post-denominational age, that the different denominations in Christianity everything is changing, and that the need for denominations is not the same as it was. How do you react to those statements?
Well, I agree that there's been great change, and of course the denominational boundaries are so fluid these days that our members come and go, and they bring gifts and riches and challenges from their own traditions, and some of our members move into other traditions. So in that sense, denominations aren't quite as important to people. But I do think that denominations do denominate. They do declare, they do state, they sort of give a sense of a particular vocation, a particular distinctive voice. And so I describe denominations not so much these days as institutions, but an accent on the gospel, the way in which you articulate it with a particular accent, a particular stress, a particular emphasis. And as in any human conversation, you remove some of the voices from the conversation and the whole ecumenical witness is diminished.
So that's a lovely image, that we're all speaking the same language and saying the same message, but with different accents. That's very beautiful.